Morning, everybody. My name is Michael McNiven. It's a pleasure for me to be here at this center and also part of this event. I work at Cumberland Advisors, and one of the things I've done in the past, it has nothing to do with Cumberland Advisors, is I was a graduate research assistant for a professor at BYU who was studying social responsibility and essentially doing well financially by doing good. So I spent some time on this subject and enjoyed it, and got to see how you can, in fact, create viable business relationships with people across the spectrum of capabilities. And so I'm happy that we start here with this panel. It was already a robust panel before we found out a few minutes ago that we were going to adjust it a little bit. So let me just introduce, first off, I want to let you know that we are going to have Steve Sexauer of Allianz. He's going to take the first slot here, and he's going to introduce another person or so, and then we will move to the balance of our panel, which will follow Troy D'Ambrosio from the University of Utah Lassonde Entrepreneur Institute, and then to Brent Johnson of Intermountain Healthcare, who's a supply chain enthusiast, is what I can figure out. Seems very excited about the subject and has quite a relationship managing the supply chain of Intermountain Healthcare, and some experience in other organizations as well. And then finally, but not least, is our people person at Harman's, which would be Lori Harman. And you can check out the bios, but the interesting thing I want to note about Lori is I don't know too many companies vice president for people. Now maybe that's a title that's starting to become in vogue or something, but the people person at Harman's, it sounds like a great job.
It is.
A wonderful thing to be associated with. And it looks like you have the platform to be very creative in how you approach it. So we look forward to hearing from all of the people on the panel. And now I'm going to turn a few minutes over to Steve Sexauer of Allianz to introduce what he has to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I'm really excited to be here, and we've adjusted the panel. It's grown from 3 to 5, so you're going to get the speed version of the cliff notes of what I thought I'd share with you. And I'm going to start with a very quick story. Last year, Stephanie described to me one of the activities here where there's a shredding business. And she went through it in detail, and I was stunned at how they had taken a group of people and found an expertise where they were so good that the competitors were doing what guilds and other competitors have done for thousands of years, is try and shut them down. And I got to thinking about that, and I said, what's happening here? If they're that good, why do we have the unemployment rate that Natalie talked about? And I started thinking about, have markets failed? And so I really got to thinking about that, and I want to thank Natalie and Bill, because you've covered 2/3 of what I was hoping to cover. Is why isn't this working? Why are the incentives failing? And I don't know the answer, but I want to share with you briefly a little bit of history. I'm going to pass around some things for you to look at. It'll only take a minute. And then leave with you a question that maybe you can work on. So the topic of my speech is social responsibility and versus, that was kind of businesses. And I just want to, it's very complex, but I want to start with what may be a controversial statement. I don't think social responsibility or business responsibility has anything to do with solving this problem. I know that's a bit of a strong statement, but if you really can employ these blocks of people after making an investment in them that creates benefit, you ought to do it. So the question I ask myself is, what's happening? So all of a sudden you have questions, and we're going to call him Brian Dawson in a minute because he tries to measure these things. I go, well, wait a minute. If there's value and there's cost, why isn't it happening? And how do you do these things? It's beyond my pay grade. So here's the history I want to give you. I'm going to pass out a book that was written in 1964, 4 years before Columbus Center. It's a 3rd edition. You just pass it down. And the reason is I mark the page, read the page mark, because it's got the equations. And I'm going to pass around another paper. This year I'm going to look at the page, which is an equation on the page, that measures the benefits of healthcare. You can hear me okay, right? Pretty good. So So the reason I'm passing around these props, just send them from table to table, look at it for 10 seconds, is there's 3 decades of some of the best minds that have looked at this problem. And for me, as Natalie told the story, I said, wait a minute, some of my best personal and professional friends have been working on this for decades, and their work is being passed around. So the thing I want to leave you with is, I don't know the answer to the question, why aren't we investing in hiring? I can start to make lists. We don't know, innovation, the guilds, people. You can have labor laws that say you can't discriminate. Those are good laws. But if you can't discriminate and you have people with highly differential levels of productivity and cost, that's an impediment. I don't know the answers, but in listening to Natalie, it's clear to me the intellectual capital is here to think through that. So my contribution to this conference is only this point, that there's this dimension with 30 years of very robust research of measuring the cost, the benefits, and doing it over a lifetime. If you look at the paper by Bob and Kevin, I mean, and if the engineers will like it, but everybody else will just zone out at the math, you can actually measure this over a lifetime. So it exists, and I think it could be applied to these problems. So that's my presentation in the fast version. I was surprised that randomly Brian Dawson was sitting at my table. David and I were equally surprised that he came up and said, I just found this on the web, and that's what my business does. We invest in companies, and one of the metrics of a value company is their ability to utilize human capital, and we measure this. So my mouth dropped. And so we rearranged the schedule. I'm going to ask Brian to come up and literally give us the 3-minute, 4-minute version of how they see the world.
Yeah, I just came across this group, and I'm very pleased to be here because, in actual fact, this aligns precisely with what we do as a firm. We've been in existence for about 3 years. My partner has cerebral palsy. He's a person with a disability. I joined about 3 years ago as a value investor. We're market-based. In other words, what we do is we look at disability as a market segment. What we believe is that sustainable change comes through the market, meaning that there's the hypothesis here that disability is something that is good for a firm, but where is the empirical evidence that would make a difference to large cap firms globally? And we look at this as a global market. What we've done is we have created a 20-factor proprietary model that's value investor based, that allows us to look across sectors. And what we've then done is created an index which is published on Bloomberg. It has close to a 2-year track record. That track record shows outperformance versus the S&P 500 and the equivalent index in Canada. That's an investable index which will come into the capital markets in the next 12 months. That will allow investors, both retail and institutional, to demonstrate that they do indeed believe in this as a market, and that will then allow sustainable change.
Thank you both for your contributions, and obviously there's lots more there, and we can maybe explore a bit more of it in the question and answer session. Let's now turn the time to Troy, and then Brent Johnson, and then Lori. Troy.
Good morning. I'm Troy D'Ambrosio. I'm the Executive Director of the Lausanne Entrepreneur Institute at the University of Utah. Thank you for having me here. We're very excited to be sponsors here and be part of this program. We have a program, a very large program at the University of Utah that involves about 5,000 students annually, not only at the University of Utah, but from colleges and universities across the state of Utah. It's a top-ranked program in the United States right now. We feel like we've created this virtual hub for students to actually create their own entrepreneurial education at the University of Utah, where they can go and take an idea and bring it to market. But specifically, I want to talk to you about a unique program we have where we involve students with university faculty inventors. So for the last 12 years, we've had this very unique program where we meet with a faculty inventor, we put a group of graduate students with them, I mentor that team, and we help try and translate the intellectual property that's coming out of the labs and research at the University of Utah into the market. And we've been pretty successful in that, and we have over 45 startup companies now that have raised over $100 million, employ several hundred people in the state of Utah. 2 summers ago, I had a couple of faculty inventors, Scott and Cheryl Wright, come to me with a project, a research project they've been working on, which is really different space than we had normally worked in. Usually we're working in medical devices or quantum nanocrystals or big data projects, but they had been working with, started a program called iStar, where they had been working with people on the autism spectrum using 3D modeling software and giving them vocational skills. And if you notice this mission statement, this thing that really struck me about this, nowhere is it's mentioned autism, nowhere is mentioned disability. It's all very positive, very strength-based about what we could do with people on the autism spectrum. And I was very intrigued by this, so we put together a team with them. I'll walk you through a little bit of the history of that. The key principles they had were very unique too. They talked with me about something that was very different and how they approached it. And instead of focusing on the disability and trying to make people neurotypical, they were focusing on the strengths that people on the autism spectrum had and using that in a positive way and trying to reach that. They did acknowledge that certain challenges, but they also saw that people with autism on the autism spectrum learn visually, spatially, and they have a number of strengths and abilities that if we could figure out how to tap into it might provide something really unique. What they did is they have a program where they really they figure what are the strengths, how do they tap into those. They started using 3D modeling software because they identified that people on the autism spectrum really learn visually, spatially. They started creating mentor programs to train these students and tapping into the creative side, and we've had great support from Universal Creative and Steve Gross to do this. And so what they did was put together a process and teach students and get to become very well trained in using a program called SketchUp, which was originally provided by Google and now spun out into another company called Trimble. And their goal was to create jobs for people, to get them trained in a technical skill to be able to be employable and with people on the autism spectrum. So it was a very unique approach. And so they came to us after they'd had a very successful track record. They brought Google in and got a grant from Google, had a seminar at the University of Utah and another one when they formed iStar, published some research on it, so they had results in peer-reviewed publications and continued to add additional workshops and publications. What they came to us with is this idea is, could they make this expandable and extensible? Could they take this out into the market and grow it beyond just the University of Utah and what we were doing here? Could they take their program and put it in a box and give it to other communities to be able to use this to train people with autism spectrum and get them jobs? So we put together a team of students. So I put together 3 graduate students, 2 MBA students, and a bioengineering student with a PhD in bioengineering. And we went through our usual process that we look when we look at a technology. And we found some interesting things. So the first thing we found is that most programs for people on autism spectrum are focused on young children, preschool and early school age children. And it's really to try and mainstream them, get them and take what's wrong with them, focus them, get them mainstream, and get them into the public school system. But the public school system, as we know, is tough for most kids to adapt to, but is also very difficult for people on the autism spectrum to be able to learn in that. And then the thing we really found is that as they get it through high school and they age out of this public school system, that they just fall off a cliff. There's really no transitional service there for that. And we found that actually a number of publications that show that people with autism spectrum have a higher rate of unemployment than people with other types of disabilities. And so we felt that there was an opportunity to create a company around here. And what we really found in the market out there was that while you had this program that was taking kids through high school and then dropping off the cliff, that out in the market, there was great market drivers that were saying, we recognize that these people have talent and can be add to our companies, be contributors to a society, and be very valued employees. So we felt there was a real opportunity here. We formed a company called Neuroversity, and this afternoon after lunch, you're going to get to see some things that we're doing right now here with Columbus. So last summer, I actually was here at Columbus Community Center for another thing, and happened to sit down and talk to Stephanie and said, are you doing anything with people on the autism spectrum? And she said, no, we've never been able to figure out what to do there. And I said, well, I'm working with these university faculty and vendors and the researchers that have developed this vocational training program for people with autism spectrum. We're looking for a place to do a pilot project and see if we can work this into a vocational training program. So just a couple of things that since we formed the company, we've had some incredible milestone successes. We've had Temple Granum out here, who is a leading advocate for people with autism spectrum disorders, and been here to see our program. Google's continued to support us. SketchUp has continued to support us. We've been able to do a crowdsourced funding on Rocket Hub. The Utah Autism Foundation seed funded the company, and the Governor's Office of Economic Development matched that seed funding. And we've since run 4 programs outside of the state of Utah, or 3 outside of the state of Utah, and 1 here again, to see if we could expand that and take it to other communities. When I met with Stephanie, I said, what could our business plan be? What is our business model? Because we wanted to look at this as an opportunity to be a sustainable enterprise with a social mission to it. So I had 2 graduate students work over the last year coming up with a program, a pilot project between Neuroversity and Columbus, and then identifying customers that would use 3D modeling services. And was there an outsourced opportunity that we could train people, have them work here at Columbus doing 3D modeling for different businesses? And we interviewed several dozen architectural firms, construction firms, engineering firms, and we found a great opportunity there, particularly with construction firms. So Big D and Oakland Construction agreed to come in to help us with the pilot project. So this is kind of what we're running right now across the parking lot. We're running this pilot project where we have a couple of projects from Big D and Oakland. We have students here from the Salt Lake City High School district coming in there with autism spectrum. They're being trained in SketchUp. We're working through the whole process of getting them to go from just learning SketchUp to actually delivering a product that's commercially viable for one of our customers. And so we had 26 parents respond to a call that would commit 2 weeks of time during the summer to be here with their kids. As I said, we held an orientation in May, and we've got the pilot program here right now, and you're going to get to see that later this afternoon. So this is really an interesting partnership that involves the University of Utah, a company that's spun out of the University of Utah, the Salt Lake City School Districts, Columbus Community Center, and a couple of employers in our community. So we're very, very excited to see the results of this and excited to show you this afternoon. So I'm going to switch gears quickly to one other thing that I'm working on with Stephanie and Gary. So we're at the University of Utah doing something very unique. We're going to create a new building that has a work-live-life program in it. So we're going to take university housing and we're going to infuse it with a place of maker space where students can actually prototype devices, start companies, and launch their companies out and live on the campus while they do this. So we were afraid that if we just stuck those 2 things together, it would look like this. And what we really wanted was something that looked like this. So what we did was we interviewed a whole bunch of students and asked them how would they want to live and what would they want to live in. So we took their input and said, what would it look like? And we gave them we did about 20 workshops with over 1,000 students, and we said, well, what they want to do is have spaces like this actually infused in the living spaces that they're at. So they don't want to just separate where they work and where they live. They actually want it built into the places where they sleep and where they work, so they can stay with the program 24 hours a day. They needed spaces where they could share working spaces with each other. They need spaces where they could launch their companies, everything from an individual desk to multiple desks to an individual office. They needed event space where they could host events and showcase their wares. And they wanted places where they could move into a loft where as they found a team and moved in together, they could actually work and form a company and live together while they were working on their company. And then they, like I said, they wanted spaces that were themed around maybe video gaming, biotechnology, around digital media. And they wanted to have some really kind of interesting living facilities. So these are actually living pods, individual living pods that we're going to put in a big open floor like this where the workspace will be here, but they'll actually live in individual rooms within that. And the reason I'm working, this is the final rendering of the building at the University of Utah campus. What we're talking with Gary and Stephanie about is all of the work that we've done with our designers and architects of working on a living workspace for people with disabilities and taking much of the things we've learned at the University of Utah and working with them on a new facility they're looking at building. And then also taking the concept of these students that we're working with right now that are doing design work for construction, for the construction community, to be able to have them actually work and design the place that they would want to live in and take it from their point of view. So I'm very happy to be here and tell you about it. Thank you for having me, and we look forward to showing you about Neuroversity later this afternoon.
Good morning. Brent Johnson from Intermountain Healthcare. As I'm thinking about the few things that I want to say and just being here, just some other thoughts came to mind. And one is that I pay tribute to everybody that's in the room today. If you think about what you're doing, we all have real jobs, we all have other things that we live for, yet we're taking a few minutes out of our life to help the road behind us be better than what we found it. I pay tribute to Gary and Stephanie and their staffs, all the board and all the volunteer. I mean, let me give it another perspective. We're all gonna die, right? On our deathbed, how many of us do you think are going to say, you know what? I wish I would have spent more time at work. It's not gonna happen. I wish I would have made more money. It's probably not gonna happen. I wish I would have made more money to pay more shareholders, bigger dividends. That would, oh, I wish I would have done that. You know, that's not gonna be something we say on our deathbed. On our deathbed, our thoughts are gonna be around family, friends, and did we help others along the way? And so, put things in perspective about what we're doing today. I mean, I'm sitting over here thinking, I'm a business guy. Some people even call me a money monger. They brought me in 9 years ago into Intermountain Healthcare to run things more like a business. We've saved $250 million out of the cost structure of Intermountain Healthcare over the last 7-8 years. And I mean, if I wasn't here for half a day, I could be back at my office trying to save another $1 million. But is that what matters? Is that what I'm going to think about on my deathbed? Probably not. So I pay tribute to you for taking time out of your lives to do this today. Quick introduction. Intermountain Healthcare is the largest company in the state of Utah, 34,000 employees, 22 hospitals, 180 clinics. I'd like to introduce, there's 2 other Intermountain employees here. Stephen Bergstrom, raise your hand. He's the director of the Office of Sustainability for Intermountain Healthcare. Rich Bott, raise your hand in the back. He's the director of Central Laundry, which has an integral story with what we're talking about here. But it's an honor to work for Intermountain Healthcare, who I thought was just a big bully until I was hired and went out to the industry across the country and realized that Intermountain Healthcare, provides the highest quality, lowest cost healthcare in the country. It's a good company. But even inside that good company, we got to run things like a business. So Intermountain Healthcare, not for profit, bringing in me, a business guy, to run things like a business, and then we're going to connect the story with why we hire Columbus Community Resources to help us continue to provide good service and make more money. We have a 8-year relationship with Columbus Community out at the Central Laundry. Let me tell you about the Central Laundry. The Central Laundry, we do all the laundry for all of our hospitals, all of University of Utah, all Huntsman Cancer Institute, and a bunch of other places that Rich has brought on, including the Ronald McDonald House, basically for no charge at all. Rich does more laundry in one day than the average family of 4 does in a lifetime. Think about that. And so it's a huge automated facility, and they do a lot of work. But along the way, they realize that there's some things that they do in that facility that go hand in hand for people with disabilities. And so we developed a relationship with Columbus Community. So we have an 8-year relationship, and then we started to think about other places in and around Intermountain that we can use employees from the Columbus Community Center. It's compatible with our mission, being a good community citizen. However, being not-for-profit does not mean not as efficient, and it should not mean that we don't care about costs. In fact, just the opposite. That's why I work for Intermountain Healthcare. We've trained ourselves to think we need to give Columbus Community Resources opportunity to do anything that they think that they can do. And all things being equal, we will choose Columbus Community. In all cases, they don't win. They're not doing our shredding yet. There's a few issues there. We look at digital imaging and some of the things that they could definitely do on our record retention. But one thing that they can help us on are some functionality at the laundry, and I'll show you that, as well as a couple other places. We employ approximately 20 employees at our laundry. Now the interesting thing, now here's where you put the business hat on and why we're good poster children for it makes good business. If it was just about being a good community citizen, why would we ever hire 8 of them as full-time employees? The fact of the matter is, Rich will tell you, when they start thinking about bringing on new employees, and there's about 110 employees out there, some of those employees are the best. Rich told me a story last week. There's a lot of automation, and there's a sheet folder, and it got jammed. And the maintenance guy, when he came and unjammed the sheet folding machine, said, this was not a Columbus community employee on the other end of this that caused this. And Rich says, no, it wasn't. How did you know? And he said, because the only way this would be jammed it would be as the operator got distracted. And Columbus community employees do not get distracted. They are so in tune with their work and stay on task. And that's an interesting assessment of the opportunities for people disabled. But if we've hired 8 of them, that's a sign that it also makes good business. And 4 of those 8, Rich tells me, they're married, which means they were integrated successfully into society. That's a good story. We built 2 years ago a supply chain center out at 7200 South. First thing we did is, what do we have here? And we immediately turned over some tote washing for our couriers, and then what makes sense for our grounds, and then we turned the groundkeeping also over at the park, up at the Park City Medical Center. So there's good opportunity. And let me just give you my closing statement, and that is this. It's kind of like seeing for the first time in a dark room when someone turns on the light. In for-profit companies or big companies like Intermountain Healthcare, you don't have time to find where there's opportunities for people with disabilities to add value. But when you do, it's an exhilarating, it's exciting, you realize it's the right thing to do, and it makes good business. But until you start looking at them with the lights on, many of us in business go through life with the lights off. Turn on the lights like we are at Intermountain Healthcare. Any company can turn on the lights and start looking for opportunities for disability people to work and add value. It makes good business. It's the right thing to do for our missions. And when we die, this is one of the things we're going to be glad we spent time doing. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Laurie Harmon from Harmon's. I guess you figured that out. I'm just going to tell you, I'm not sure how much you guys know about Harmon's. I've worked there for 40 years. I started when I was 17 in high school and have worked there ever since. I planned on being a nurse, but that didn't work out. But I love my job. In 1932 is when Harmon's actually began by Jake and Irene Harmon. And they established it with humble beginnings, like probably every business did at that time, as a produce stand on 33rd and Main, so right near here. And it was called the Market Spot. It was mostly a produce stand, but as customers asked for more things, they would bring more things in. And they lived in the back of the business. It was just sort of a little like, we have a picture of it at the office, but it was like an open air sort of thing, but they could pull the shades or sides down for the winter and stuff. And they were open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even with that. Let's see. Their focus was taking care of customers and always offering the best value. At one point in time, a semi-truck, after they had opened the stand a few years, a semi-truck lost its brakes and demolished the store. Coming right into the back room where they lived and almost killing Jake and Irene's son, Terry Harmon. It was 1941 when that happened. So they decided to rebuild, and they went to look at different locations. And Jake owned some property on 3500 South and 4000 West in Granger at the time. And in 1945, Harmon's appeared on that building and instead of the Market Spot. And many of you maybe remember the green store that was way out there on 35th and 4000 West. Some of you are probably as old as me, and you can probably remember that. It was added on to many, many times as a store and local business. The continued focus of customer service combined with Jake's desire to bring in new and innovative products and equipment made the Green Store a huge success. As the store grew, so did Terry, and there was soon discussion about expanding the business. As talk about that continued, another tragedy struck and burnt the Green Store down. It burnt to the ground. It left the family in dire straits, both financially and emotionally. But one thing that just sort of lifted everything up was the beauty of the people, I guess, because the community and vendors rallied around the Harmon family, around Jake and Irene and Terry and Doreen, and they helped us. The customers bought damaged product, labels that they were burned off, some of them. Randy talks about like opening up cans of things without label and like being excited about what might be in it. You never knew if it was going to be dog food or tuna fish or whatever, but sounds a little risky for me. But some customers certainly helped do that. And then vendors helped with the cleanup, and they also forgave debt of Jake and Irene, helping them to be able to get started again. So all that support did allow Jake and Terry, his son, and then their wives to rebuild. And in 1971, the West Store out in West Valley today was rebuilt. And it was very innovative. Terry and Jake went around to look at different companies, and we had everything at that store. Everything from, of course, your groceries, but we also had guns, a post office, a watch center, hardware, Levi's, and even cowboy boots. Everything the customer wanted. It was state of the art at that time. And soon we expanded to a second store. Jake was a little worried to do that because he kind of liked control, and he was the entrepreneur and liked his arms around it. But Terry, his son, talked him into the expansion, and in 1974, 75 is when we opened the store it was 7200 South Fort Union Boulevard. That came a reality. Jake passed away soon after that in February of 76, followed by his wife Irene, and she passed away in 1998. So as CEO and president, Terry and then his wife Doreen embraced the same values of customer service and innovation as they entered a phase of growth. Terry passed away in August of 06, but the spirit and commitment of Jake and Irene and Terry and Doreen still live in our 3,000 associates today. We will and do deliver the highest quality products and I believe the best value in the state. We believe that if our associates are given and held to expectations and appreciated and valued, they in turn treat the customers wonderfully. And our mission statement, I don't know if I have this later, but our mission statement is to value our associates. And then the expectations of the customers will be exceeded. And obviously customers are first in any business, but it's just not what we believe. We believe that our associates must come first and work to take care of that. Today, Doreen Harmon, still alive, she's chairman of the board. Dean Peterson's the president of Harmon's, and he is not a family member. He is a visionary, and he has wonderful leadership. Today we have 16 supermarkets, a floral distribution center, a grocery distribution center, and are planning 2 and possibly 3 stores again next year. So Randy and Bob Harmon, I'm sure some of you have heard of those fellows, are the active owners and are the face and the spirit of our company. I can personally testify that the dedication and commitment of the Harmon's family, Doreen, Randy, and Bob, are truly humble people and consider an honor to protect and serve our customers by ensuring the best, most safe, and highest quality food possible, and also loving people. It's a critical piece of our culture that we support local vendors when possible. We assess them in moving to the next step in areas we'll help a new business and a local business even get started with packaging or whatever we can do to help them. And last but not least, we're very dedicated to our community, and that's always been a value of Jake and Irene and Terry and Doreen and continues with Randy and Bob today. Most of Harmon's operating board, I think there are 9 or 10 of us, serve on additional boards besides the Harmon's operating board. Bob's very big into the MS Society. I'm on the board of Special Olympics. We have a board member on the food bank, a Boys and Girls Club, and several industry-related boards, because I really do think you need to give back. So we're backed by our associates and customers. We give back funds, time, and support. Harmon's employs many special needs associates, and I don't mean this to sound like we're doing a good deed, because let me set you straight, that is just not how it is. These associates are inspirations to us all, and they teach us daily what life is all about. Brandon, who works at our Brickyard location, and he's worked there for 14 years, his last name's Wershowski, I think that's how you say it, but he tells me, Laurie, you just have to say, where's your house key? And that's how you'll remember it. So I just call him Brandon, where's your house key? Anyway, he started 14 years ago as a bagger, and he's now a successful cashier. He brings daily riddles and gives those to the customers. And lots of times when I'm in the Brickyard store, his line's the longest because customers want to go through his line. He's very productive. His raises are right up there with anybody else's, and he is an inspiration to all of us at Harmon's. And then Lee Oder-Easy has been, I think that's how you'll say his last name, has been a dedicated bagger and much more for over 25 years with our company. He's married, he never complains, he's always on time. I think in the 25 years I could count on one hand how many times he's maybe had an issue with public transportation or something that he couldn't be there on time, or called in sick in 25 years, less than a handful. And then Karen, one of our Special Olympians, pulled me aside a few weeks back and told me that she got a raise because she has taken great initiative and she has really good performance. And I'm on the board of Special Olympics, and I met her there because she's on the board too. And she's this is maybe a year or so ago, and she's like, I keep telling Randy and Bob I want a job, but they are not helping me. And so she loves me because I got her a job right away, and so she just thinks I'm the cat's meow, let me tell you. So I could go on and on about all of these wonderful dedicated associates. And of course, we're proud to be associated with Columbus Community, and we do some special projects with them and looking forward to doing more. So I'm proud to be Vice President for People here at Harmon's. We believe that culture is created through honesty in product, relationships, and interactions based on sincerity, love, and kindness. And that gives us a better culture. I do believe people gravitate to where they feel good, whether they know it or not. If so inclined, you might later want to check out our website, harmonsgrocery.com. I have Mindy and Amber here today, and Mindy's from marketing and Amber's in the people department too. And there is a video about our entrepreneurship. I'm kind of humble about it. We don't really go out and brag about it, but I guess marketing's put together something, so if you would like more information about what Harmon's contributes, you're certainly welcome to watch that later. Thank you.
Well, thanks to our panelists. We've had a lot to think about, actually. All of our panelists, and also Brian, who joined us, have given us unique perspectives. We've heard a little bit from the conceptual framework. Steve Sexauer has sent around some of the thinking that's gone into this. We've also heard about an index that's published on Bloomberg, which is trying to quantify this type of information. What Troy brought to us was very interesting, full scale in its approach, and we also heard a lot how a major hospital system is implementing, and also how the Harmon group is working. I find it interesting that there is when we see the Columbus Center thing, sign here, it says entrepreneurs of the human spirit. Isn't that what it's all about, right? The human spirit and promoting human flourishing. And that's something that always speaks to me of how can I, in my daily life, promote human flourishing? How can the human person have value and be promoted? How can we promote independence, industry, thrift, and self-respect? And do it in a way that's sustainable and promotable. And that's, we've heard some of that. We have time for 2 questions. And then I'm going to turn the time over to David Kotok for a little bit of housekeeping for a few minutes before the next panel. So we've had lots of good information presented, and we have time for a question or two. Would anyone like to ask a question? Thank you. Please state your name. So the question is, how are you quantifying, evaluating, and monitoring the success levels of those with special needs who are being employed?
We do a value analysis, a business case for every time we hire more employees, and if it makes sense compared to the alternative, we do it. But remember what I said, the best test is when we take some of those employees and hire them. You would never hire them when you're comparing them to other people unless they were very competitive, if not better than other people. So putting your money where your mouth is hiring them as employees with the, the overhead that comes with it and the long-term commitment. Rich, when you hire more, because sometimes there's been 12, now there's 20, you just know there's certain activities that they're better at than most, or the same as, and so then we want to. Anything else?
Their productivity and their quality is better along with everybody else's. They're always raising the bar.
That's a quick answer from Intermountain.
Well, and I would say, as far as Harmon's, I don't think we really evaluate them any different than we would somebody without a disability. I mean, I think you have to look at more than just productivity. Well, I guess you need to think about what productivity is, because, I mean, I'm not a numbers person. I'm sure my CFO would like to strangle me sometimes because I don't know numbers at all. But what is productivity? Because if we measure what a cashier does, and we can look at items scanned per minute, and does their drawer balance, and yeah, we measure all that. But I think the highest thing should be if I stand there and see more people in Brandon's line and they're having a good interaction with him and getting taken care of. I mean, so when we look at what makes a successful cashier and what criteria are we going to get put together for their success and for their raises, it should be just as much on the human spirit and things they bring than if they scan so many items per minute, which you can scan a lot of items per minute and kind of not be that nice. So I think it's a bigger picture than the numbers, quite honestly. And Amber, I don't know, Amber's in the recruiting and training and development. Do you have anything to add? And sometimes we do have to, like you get them in one job and then you have to maybe try something else. What's wrong with that? We do that not only with people with disabilities, but different people. I mean, it doesn't matter. Sometimes we don't fit in one position, but if we go try something else, sometimes a cashier is better, has more structure, sometimes produce where they're working on their own. So, why not just try a few things, see what fits.
Yeah, and getting the right job for the person's skills. Right. You might even say someone with a disability might have an advantage from the things that they're very good at.
Absolutely.
So it's not even a level playing field for somebody who's supposedly without a disability. Absolutely. Steve had something.
I just want to offer a quick markets insight that goes to Brent's turning the light on. And oddly, I'm going to connect that to coffee shops. There's this phenomenon that if you see a coffee shop and somebody opens a competing coffee shop across the street, the combined business actually grows even more. So one way to think about the network effect is people working in businesses were highly inefficient and imperfect. We're just struggling to deal with complexity. And so there's a networking effect that if I find out that Intermountain Health has this gain from matching people with specialized skills, in this case, to their jobs, and I talk to them about it, well, then I'm going to go pursue that because the light bulb went off for me. And there's a lot of work, analytical work, on the value of networking. There's a big theory is that's why cities exist. So I just want to mention that because of Brent's comment, but also the role Columbus Center plays. I think for me personally, I would have never had a clue had I not spent the time, but now the light's on, now it's in my best interest to go find out why that was better and make my company better.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Turn the time now to David. Let's thank our panelists for their contributions.